All right. So I tell every guest, April, if you end up saying something you wish you hadn't said, tell me and I'll edit it out. I usually do a very minor editing. I just kind of take out the beginning, take out the ending, and, go and just wherever the conversation takes us. But if you end up, saying something damn, I wish I hadn't said that, just let me know.
All right.
All right, great. All right, here we go. In 3, 2, 1. Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Set Lusting Bruce, your podcast all about Bruce Springsteen, his music, and mostly his fans. I am your host, Jesse Jackson. We are jumping off the Bruce train today, but I'm sure he will come up. And we are joining the meditation train and the music train. April is joining me today. April, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. It's great.
Yeah. So tell us a little about yourself.
Well, my name is April, and I am a mom, a musician, and a military veteran. I create, as you mentioned, meditations that just help with everyday life. I think a lot of times when we try to think about meditation or like changing some sort of our like spiritual practice, if you will, we want it to just move mountains and change everything overnight. And I find I have a lot more success and my clients have a lot more success when we just tackle little things that make a difference in our daily life. So that's me.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Why did you get into this? What caused you to want to try to help people to be a little less stressful?
Well, as I think most inventions happen because we need to solve a problem for ourselves. Mm-hmm. And mine came with motherhood. So I mentioned I'm a mom. I have a 4-year-old son, and we struggled for a long time to become parents. So it was just so exciting when we became parents. And as most people, I wanted to do like the perfect job, right? I wanted to do everything right. And I found, I was exhausted and short-tempered and all of the things I didn't want to be. And so I started creating these music, and I combine music and singing with tapping. It's an emotional freedom technique practice of releasing stress and anxiety from our bodies. And it just really was that shortcut to calm that I needed in this highly stressful time of my life. And then COVID happened and everybody got stressed. So I started sharing it to a wider audience, and it's really taken off.
Yeah, I have a really good friend named Sarah Hickman, who is a musician, and she did like 3 children albums, 4, I guess. And her first one called Newborn, she has a song. She was at the doctor's office and there was a little bitty, piece of green in the little newborn, in her baby. There's a goops in it, got a little goops in it. And she recommended that she is a firm believer in parents singing with their children, to making music and making up silly songs to bond. So I think this is really fun, and I'm looking forward to learning more about it. But we always like to start at the beginning. So, okay. Which is a very good place to start. Speaking of music, tell me about where you grew up and what kind of music did your family listen to?
I was born in Vicksburg, Mississippi.
Okay.
But my parents were from Pennsylvania. So I was born and raised in the South by parents who were from the North.
Okay.
And so I sort of ended up with no accent and very little knowledge of Southern like culture and cooking. I didn't pick that up until when I went off to college, and I was in the cafeteria at college, and I was like, oh, this must be grits. This must be what everybody's talking about. So growing up, we mostly listened to Christian music. My parents, well, my mom in particular, was very, very much like a faith and church person. And so that was kind of what we grew up with. Although now we're talking about it, and I'm remembering that she saved up her lunch money and joined the fan club for Glenn. Why is this name escaping me?
Glenn Campbell?
Thank you, Glenn Campbell.
Okay.
So that was a staple growing up. But really and truly, like I grew up, started my singing with singing in church, and Jesus Loves Me and all of the hymns that sort of are the foundations of church music.
What denomination?
Well, so we were what I now know is called church hoppers. So we went from denomination to denomination, which at the time I'm sure was frustrating for the congregations we were a part of. But later in life, I became the music director for our church for a period of time. And that I really realized that meant I know the hymns from all the denominations, right? So there's like, we were Baptist and we were Methodist and we were Protestant and we were Nazarene.
Okay.
We kind of went everywhere. But the great thing about that is I've sort of learned all the music from all the places. So.
Alan Jackson a few years ago did 2 CDs of, religious music that was, and they were windows back to my childhood. My grandfather was very active in the local Baptist church. And so I was raised Southern Baptist. And so all those songs, struck a chord with me because I grew up singing them. So I absolutely know that feeling.
In fact, when I share a lot of these meditations, I build around the lyrics from hymns just because they are timeless truths.
Yeah.
And when I share them on meditation platforms and to like wider audiences, so many people tell me like, really not a religious person, but I love hymns. Like there's something about that music that still really speaks to our spiritual side, no matter where we are.
Yeah. And I just had a guest on, and I'm drawing a blank on his name. It's been a hectic couple weeks, but we talked about repetition and that that there is something very satisfying about that repetition. Almost every kid who was raised Catholic, right, learned, their rosary, the Lord's Prayer, Our Mary, and that repetition. And there are times when musically we repeat, there is a chorus and that, people know. So yeah, there is that sense of, that familiar does bring us comfort and brings us this mantra, right? We all have different mantras we use.
Exactly.
Yeah. So as you're getting to be a teenager and going up, did you start exploring other kinds of music?
Well, I did. And so, I'm a singer. And so I ended up doing a lot of vocal training in classical music. That was where I primarily started my studies. And then always just knew I wanted to be a singer and that there was really no other option. That interview that I mentioned I was listening to of yours recently, that person also said, like, I'm going to be a rock star and plan B is I'm going to be a rock star.
Yeah.
And my dad is an engineer and he was very much wanted me to have a plan B, as most parents do. They want to keep you safe. And I just said, I know I'm supposed to major in voice. Like there's just, this is what I'm meant to do. So I went to college and I majored in voice. And
where did you go to school?
Louisiana Tech University.
Very nice.
Yeah.
So my grandparents owned a dairy farm in Rose Pine, Louisiana.
Okay.
So, which is just north of DeRidder. So I'm very familiar with Ruston. And yes. So
and it has changed so much. So I'm going to date myself here, but I went to Tech in 99. And we just went back this past year. We live in South Louisiana, and so we evacuated from Hurricane Ida, and we decided, hey, let's just take our son up and see our alma mater. And oh my goodness, it's like like got its own movie theater and restaurants now. And back in the day, it was small. So I'm kind of jealous of the experience they're getting now.
What part of Louisiana do you live in now?
We live just outside New Orleans.
Okay. I was just in New Orleans right around 4th of July weekend. And I'll end up cutting this out. Let me make a note. My mom had a stroke, and so she lives there in Lake Charles, and so they had to air flight her to the Osprey. Yeah, Osprey in New Orleans for surgery.
Wow.
Yeah. So I was just there, and then the following week, my son and wife went, and they said it does kind of suck to go to New Orleans and you don't get to go eat a good po' boy, or
right? Eating is the reason you go.
Yeah, exactly. Really. Yeah. So, well, very nice. Talk about a lot of great music though in the New Orleans area.
Yes. So I'm up in Ruston and I'm majoring in voice. And then here I come, I'm coming up on graduation, and I literally had no idea what I was going to do with this degree. Like I just knew I wanted to be a singer, and I didn't really get much past that. And so we're like a month, maybe 2 months before graduation. And I'm like, oh shoot, like everybody else that I know is sort of lining up their jobs and stuff. And the traditional route, if you're a singer and you don't have like a recording contract or something, is you go into teaching. And that just did not appeal to me at the time. And I just really wanted to sing. And so I typed in, I went on Yahoo Jobs and I did a search for who was hiring singers. And there was some cruise lines that were hiring performers. And then there was the United States Navy needed vocalists for their fleet bands. And I didn't have a car, and the recruiting office was within walking distance of my dorm. And so that made my decision for me. I walked up to the recruiting office and I told them that I was wanting to audition for the vocalist position. The recruiter did not even know that there was a Navy band.
Sure. Yeah, I could see that.
It's pretty unique. It's a very niche job in the military. And so we learned together about how to audition for the band, and I made it. So then right after graduation, like 3 days after I graduated college, I went to boot camp, and I had zero idea what I was getting into. I had never done a push-up, didn't know a chief from a petty officer. Like I had a crash course in boot camp. But it was wonderful. Like it really, because I knew I was going to get to do what I wanted to do, which was sing. Boot camp was just like the path that you needed to, like the testing ground that you needed to get through to get to your dream job. So that's when it really all started for me. And when I started to really branch out in my musical taste was because, I mean, I was part of a rock band and a ceremonial band, and you name it, we had to cover it. So that really sort of blew open my listening and performing experience.
I keep seeing this. This sounds like the plot of a fun romantic comedy, right? That goes, no. I'm not really joining the Navy. I'm just in this music part of the Navy. What is this? Why am I having to learn a gun, and shoot? And, I sure that was really a culture shock.
It was. And I will tell you a fun story about that exact experience of needing to shoot a gun. And so, you get to boot camp. I was used to asking questions and being able to have some amount of decision making in where I went and what I did. But Of course, boot camp just beats that right out of you. And so I got real used to, after the first couple of weeks, I was like, okay, I'm just going to get in line and march where they tell me to march. And then I'm just going to do whatever they tell me to do. And again, just counting down the days. As soon as I'm done with this, I know I get to do what I want to do. And so one of those days, we were marching and we get somewhere and they handed me some earplugs. Like, okay, whatever. I put the earplugs in. Then they hand me a secondary set of hearing protection. And at that point, I looked at the chief and I said, "What is this for?" And he said, "Oh, you're at a shooting range. We're going to teach you how to fire this, whatever the weapon was." And I said, "Oh, I'm anti-gun." And he said, "Do you want to get out of this hellhole?" And I said, "Yes, very much." He goes, "Shoot this gun." And I did. But I never had to handle a weapon again after that.
That's funny.
Yeah, it really was.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. How long were you in the Navy?
4 years.
Okay.
Yep.
And that was enough? The one.
Yeah, it was an absolute dream experience. I would recommend it for anyone. Again, like, as long as you know that the job that you're going to be doing in the military is something you want to do, why not get paid well for it? And
Sure.
And it really was a great experience.
Why?
Caveat. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to ask him, why did you decide not to re-enlist?
Okay, so that the caveat being, as a single person, it was a great job.
Okay.
At the time, like when I was in college, I started dating my now husband.
Okay.
And I broke the news to him in the school cafeteria that I was joining the Navy. It was like, just, "Hey, by the way."
Yeah.
I don't know where I'm
what?
be.
What? Yeah, I can imagine.
And I just assumed at the time, we had only been dating a little while, and I just assumed we wouldn't attempt to make it work. And he said that he had waited a long time for me, and he was going to keep waiting if I was game to do that. And so I said,
"Oh, nice."
I know, he's a dream. Go ahead.
Where all did you travel with the Navy?
So here's the real fun part. So you graduate boot camp, you go to A school where they teach you how to be a military musician. So, obviously you audition, they know you can do the job, but then they have to teach you all the protocols and like basic music stuff that you need to know. Well,
yeah, because my dad was in the Army, and I've had plenty of people that serve. And so, you get out of boot camp, and then you go to the specific school, like whether you're going to be a sonar technician, whether you're going to be, an infantryman, you're going to be, a radar, your job was to learn how to be a musician. That's pretty fun.
It really was.
How big of a class?
It was maybe 30 of us.
Okay. That's a lot.
It was also all different branches of the service too.
Okay.
So the Army has fleet bands, and the Marine Corps has fleet bands.
Okay.
And the Navy has fleet bands. So we were all at A school together.
Okay.
And so while we didn't end up, stationed together, that was where we all learned together.
Okay. Okay.
And so that was in Virginia. And then at the end of that time, I think it was about 6 months, they asked, "Well, where do you want to be stationed?" Like, you obviously don't get your first choice, or they just want to know, sort of in general, where would you like to be?
Sure.
And at the time, I was still dating my now husband. He was in the New Orleans area, and they have a band here in New Orleans. And so I said, "Well, that'll be my first choice." And then, of course, there is a band in Hawaii. So why wouldn't I want to go there?
Sure.
Right?
Exactly. Right.
So they ended up giving me my first choice. And so I got to come be stationed back in New Orleans. So the joke is, join the Navy, see the world. I joined the Navy and I got stationed back in my hometown. But we did have quite a large area that we toured in. And so we basically did the Gulf Coast from Texas to Florida. That was our stomping grounds. And so we would sometimes fly, sometimes drive to do different performing opportunities, wherever the Navy needed us. Sometimes we would do recruiting gigs, like at high schools and stuff. And then sometimes we would do ship christenings, or submarine christenings, or people retiring, that kind of thing.
So I remember the story that Carl Wilson, who was one of the founding Beach Boys, talked about, that he reached the point where he was tired of, and I can't remember what specific song, but there was a specific song he was tired of singing. And then all of a sudden, in the middle of the concert, he kind of saw everyone being happy, and kind of refound his joy singing lead on that song. So was there a song that you went, oh gosh, not again?
Well, as a vocalist, your number one job is to sing the national anthem. That is like the number one thing you have to be able to do. And because you're singing it with, or sometimes at least with the military bands, you have to sing it in a particular key because the band learns it in the key of F. And so that's the key. You have to be able to sing it. So, some days that's not quite, where my comfortable range would be or whatever. And so that was a little, it sounds bad to say annoying because it's
I get that. Yeah.
But it is sort of like there were days when I was like, here we go again. Yeah.
Yeah. I imagine.
But again, like it's for better or for worse, it's our song. So
well, and I've heard people say it is not necessarily an easy song to sing.
It is
as
not.
You see how many people, how different celebrities and different people doing before sporting events.
Right.
Some people knock it out the park, and other people, it's a tough one. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
it definitely is. It's a very wide ranging song.
Yeah.
And so in that respect, it's not a great, just in a technical way, it's not a great national anthem because it's not one that everyone can sing.
Right.
And you really would want your national anthem to be something that's got a smaller range that everybody can join in on.
Yeah.
I will say that while we're talking national anthem, recently, a few years ago, I was asked to sing the national anthem at the Saints game. So
how fun.
Game. And I had been like basically once a season I sing for the basketball team for I guess they're now the Pelicans. And so I sing in the arena on a regular basis. And so then now I was going to be singing in the Superdome, which is a much different environment. And so that was like, as a civilian, that was the biggest deal that I had ever done. Like while I was in the Navy, we had plenty big opportunities, but then as a civilian, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. And I will say singing in that space allowed me to, because of the acoustics, I could hear everyone else singing along. And that is powerful. And we started our discussion talking about the power of singing and music and like just that bringing together of everyone is just really powerful.
Yeah. I don't know how much you're familiar with Bruce, but when he does Hungry Heart live, he has the audience sing the first verse and he doesn't sing. And then he comes back and sometimes he does the first verse, and then other times he'll just start with the second verse. And that tradition started years ago. He had forgotten the words for some reason. And so the band so the audience started singing. And so now that's kind of become a tradition. That's a cool story. It is. Did you do a lot of solo work when you're in the Navy, or was it a lot of a choral, just a combination of both?
It was a lot of, I guess you would call it solo work. There was a rock band, and so there was I was one of the singers, and there was a male singer, and we would trade off lead or back up, that kind of thing. So that was like the main gig, I would say, and then the other part of the job would be singing the national anthem either with the huge band or by yourself.
What was y'all's go-to closer when y'all were rocking it out? You remember?
Okay, well, I will say my favorite, like, I don't want to say it's the go-to closer, but I will say my favorite closer was Evanescence. You Never Call Me When You're Sober.
Okay.
That is when I'm like, that is when I'm most, like, if you want to say rock star, like that would be my sort of, my husband came to one of our gigs one time, and that's the only time he ever came up to me after a song and was like, oh wow, like that's
funny.
That's you.
That's funny.
And it is funny because it's not like my my personality or like
Right.
not one that you would picture. But really at the time when I was in, Kelly Clarkson was big. So we would do a lot of her stuff. And then like Blink 182. And I play piano as well. So we did Natasha Bedingfield, some of her stuff. But yeah, my rock star song, I would say, is Evanescence.
That's awesome. That's so great. So do you have favorite musicians now, favorite artists or albums that you go to on a regular basis, maybe that provide you comfort or helps you kind of, is, as we call it a lot, when I talk to Bruce fans, we talk about Bruce is the soundtrack of our lives. So are there musicians or albums that kind of are that way to you?
I love Sarah Bareilles. I've listened to her a lot. I love Pentatonics, or like a lot of those more vocally centered.
Sure, that makes sense.
Artists, I would say, or I guess maybe singer-songwriter genre. That's just calming to me right now, and that might change at a different stage in my life. Our 4-year-old is sort of in charge of the music now when he's in the car, and so I listen to a lot of soundtracks. He really whatever movies or characters or TV shows he's into, he likes to listen to the soundtracks, even though they're instrumental, which really surprises me. Like I would expect him to only want songs that he could sing along with, but
that repetition. Yeah,
it's really surprising. I mean, it's fascinating.
So let's go back to you were talking about you were a new mom, a lot of stress, and so you talk to me a little bit more about this journey you've had of combining music and meditation to not only give yourself comfort, and then why you decided that you could branch out and kind of give this to the world.
I'm happy to do that. Thank you for asking.
Okay.
So where we left off in the timeline part was when I got out of the Navy, right?
Right.
So that was a great gig. I would recommend it for anyone that can do it. But as a single person. So then I was in love with my husband. We wanted to get married and we wanted to start a family. And I was like, I just can't see myself being the mom who's like, can't come to your piano recital, mommy has a gig, or we've got to move to wherever, because that's what the Navy wants us to do.
Sure.
It's just, you really are owned by the military, and if you're okay with that and you're flexible, it's great. But if you want to like build a life somewhere, it's really hard.
Yeah.
So I got out of the military and I thought that I was going to get a real job, quote unquote, real job. Right now I've had my fun. I've been a rock star. I've done the traveling thing. Now I'm going to do like just regular 9-to-5 work, and I'm going to have my weekends free, and it's going to be amazing. And it was torture. I had a real job for 6 months. I worked in the courthouse in our like local government doing basically file work kind of, it was just something supposedly that I wanted, and I hated it. And I came home after 6 months and I told my husband, I don't know what I want to do, but I know it's not this. And he said, quite frankly, I'm sick of your bitching, and I would really rather you not be like coming home unhappy all the time. And so I quit. And a couple months later, our church was looking for a music director. And I had been volunteering and helping out here and there. And our pastor said, we could pay you to do that if you would just apply for this job. And I really had never in a million years pictured myself doing that. Despite my background, it just really wasn't something that I thought I would do.
Okay.
And I ended up applying. I got the job. It was one of those, it was something I was meant to do. Like for sure, when I stepped into that role, it was like, oh, wow, yeah, this is definitely for me. And I did that for 10 years and I loved it. It was one of those, like, I cannot believe they're paying me to do this job. And then one day the switch flipped And it went from, I can't believe they're paying me to do this, to they cannot pay me enough to do this. Like, and there was not any drama or any behind the scenes anything. It just was not supposed to be my job anymore.
Wow.
And I really, okay.
I was going to ask, do you have any idea what flipped the switch? Was it a bunch of small things, or just that was good and now I've had my fill?
It was pretty much that. Like, this was really great, and now I don't have it in me anymore.
Yeah.
It was a Palm Sunday, which is my very favorite Sunday of the year. Because, like, as we've talked about, it's participatory. Like, anytime that we can get physically involved as well as, vocally involved, I just love that, because it really gives you ownership over the experience. And so, everyone in the congregation is waving palm branches and singing the songs. And it was just like supposed to be something that really moved me to tears every year. And in that moment was when I was like, I am doing a great job of putting on a show of a spiritual experience for everybody else, but it's not happening for me anymore.
Was it a conscious of faith, or just the gig?
Yeah, it was just the gig.
Okay.
It was really like, being up front in any capacity, whether you're, fronting a rock band or you're leading worship, is draining.
Yeah.
And so eventually we all need a break.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I gave my notice, and it was very emotional. Like I said, it wasn't that I wanted to leave. It just wasn't for me anymore.
So just a quick no. What I find amusing is my day gig is I run a call center. So I have people that, take inbound phone calls. I've been doing that for over 30 years. And someone once told me this, and I've used the line, someone will come by and they're giving notice and they're really upset about it, or they're debating on whether they should leave or not. And I go, this is a job. It's not a church, right? This is just a gig. You see where I'm going, right? So, this is just a job. It isn't like you're resigning from church. You've given us your notice. Go try this other adventure. And if you decide you want to come back, there'll always be a place for you. So
that's hilarious.
So you actually are telling the church, yeah, I may still worship here, but I can't do this gig anymore.
Yeah, well, and I've managed to navigate it. I hope well, knock on wood. We're still members there. I'm part of the leadership team. And like I said, no, it was nothing bad that happened. It just wasn't supposed to be my job anymore. We have a wonderful music director now, and I get to help him sometimes. And I'm happy to do that, but it just wasn't for me. It wasn't supposed to be my job anymore.
Do you have times where you go, thank goodness them that are doing that?
So bad. Just say.
Yes. Well, that would be okay. That's okay, because I'm sure there's also times where you go, your husband might go, April, you would have done that better.
No, he would never say that. Actually.
That's very sweet.
My husband is an engineer as well. I'm surrounded by engineers.
Okay.
That's just because it's the exact opposite of how I am. That helps to balance me, I think.
That's nice.
He is very well. And I will say, in college, I started out by dating a lot of music majors or theater majors or art people, people that were more like my personality. And it never lasted very long, because we were sort of competitive in that we were all kind of doing the same thing. Whereas my husband, he has zero idea what I do. And I really don't have any idea what he does. And so I can just say, I'm really proud of you. I love you. And I'm so glad that you do what you do. And he can do the same for me. And he has no, when I was doing the music directing at church, and I had a bad Sunday or I had a good Sunday, it didn't matter. Like we were still going to come home and have lunch and just go on with our rest of our day. And it wasn't like I never really get any critique from him. I don't really ever get much compliments from him either. Like it just sort of is. I kind of like it that way. Like I mentioned, he complimented my Evanescence cover, and that was really like
that was nice. What I love is every once in a while I talk to I was talking to someone who had done an Ironman, the race where you do, the biking and the swimming and then the biking and the running. Yeah, exactly.
Or boot camp.
Yeah, exactly. And she was telling the story that it is not good when a husband and wife are both training for an Ironman.
Ooh,
because you're both exhausted. Yet someone has to put out the garbage. Someone has to put the kid to bed, and if you have one person training, then the other person can pick up some of the slack, right? So yeah, I think I also find it interesting, April, that I've run into a couple of times where I've seen someone who is very much a type A individual, and they're very ambitious, they're very driven, and then they find themselves attracted to someone who isn't as driven, more artsy, right? And then they'll go, oh, especially if it's a female who's this driven, and I'll always give the advice to go, do you want to be with someone like yourself? I mean, I know there is the kind of classic, the man is the driver and the female is supporter, but in your case, it makes sense. It's the other way. You should have a spouse that complements you these different ways. And so absolutely. I think that's nice. Yeah.
We are both firstborn. And so we do both have all the right answers, and sometimes they're the same. So I will say, like, we do get into trouble in that respect.
Yes.
But what we've learned, Yeah.
When people ask me, Linda and I have been married since 1984, so pretty long time. And when people ask us for advice, there's all that normal, oh, be your friends and all that, which is true, but practical. I said, here's some practical advice. One, never say I told you so. When I said very early, if you're debating a decision, and if you have any doubts about the decision, bring it up before the decision is made. Then once the decision is made, you are not allowed to go, well, I always thought that was nope. It's easy for you to be a Monday morning quarterback, right? And say, when it turned out poorly, that, well, I always said, nope, the time to say that is before we make the decision. And that brings us a lot of peace. And the other is, when you have a newborn, and you probably got to this, decide before you go to bed who's getting up when the baby wakes you up. Because if you don't decide beforehand, both of you are going to lay in bed waiting for the other one to do it. But if you decide, if you say, okay, it's me tonight, then the other one just keeps sleeping. Or if your spouse says, okay, I've got it, you can keep sleeping. Those are my two practical advices.
We still to this day, and we don't even really use the baby monitor anymore, but still to this day, it's like on my side of the bed or it's on his side of the bed. And we just like it's literally passing the baton back and forth.
Like, okay, this is yours. This is yours.
My turn.
That's great. All right. So you've decided that you're calling, you've done your service to your country. You've done your service for your church. Now then, what's next for April?
Right. So and that's the big question, right? So I literally, there is sort of a theme here, right? I quit the military and didn't know what I was going to do. I quit my quote unquote real job and didn't know what I was going to do. quit my church job and didn't know what I was going to do. And I just sort of, I wandered for a little while after that.
Sure.
But I needed to rest. And that's actually right after I stepped down in the church position was when I was able to get pregnant. And so, we're finally starting our family. And so that's really exciting. And I started this, I really felt like the music that I was doing in church was really uplifting and very like provided a spiritual experience for people.
Okay.
But I wanted to be able to reach people that wouldn't necessarily come to church. Like I didn't feel like church should have ownership over this uplifting experience.
Okay. Yes, it does.
So like, how can I create music that is, still so powerful and moving, but isn't going to necessarily only apply to this faith community here in our little town or even in our denomination. And so that's when I started looking at hymns and really dissecting like the parts of them that really spoke to me. And then I started creating these meditations using those lyrics, and then incorporated tapping because it really helps it to become a physical cleansing as well as like a spiritual uplifting experience. So that was a process over, the course of my pregnancy and then into new motherhood. And I really kind of kept that to myself. It was something that was helping me, and I just kept it to myself for a while. And then, like I said, COVID sort of created chaos for everybody.
Yeah.
And I am a teacher on the Insight Timer meditation app. It's a free app. Everything is accessible for free. And I had been posting recordings there, and then right around COVID, they came out with a new feature where you could go live and sort of interact with people in real time. And so it was in March of 2021. I scheduled a live event, and I did it early in the morning on our back porch because I knew my son wouldn't be awake, and I could do it on our back porch and not disturb anybody in the house. And I literally just started by saying, listen, here's something that's helped me. Maybe it'll help you too. And did just like a quick 20-30 minute session. And we had people on from all over the world, and they were all experiencing relief using this technique. And so then I thought, okay, well, I guess this is a thing. And so I've started, like, since then, I do live events at least once a month on Insight Timer. And then I've also created videos for YouTube and work with clients one-on-one now. And so it's just grown from there. And it has, it took me a little bit longer to get this on-ramp of what my next business would be.
Yeah.
But this seems to be it.
So it's probably, I'm oversimplifying things, but if you have like quick hits for suggestions to people on, because I think we're all stressed. I think we all struggle and do things. Right now, there's a lot of angst among my Springsteen siblings because tickets are on sale, and there's all this Ticketmaster is doing dynamic pricing, and so seats that should cost you $150 are going for $5,000. It's just it's crazy. So, do you have some quick suggestions or thoughts that you can pass on to us?
Yes, absolutely. So the greatest hit, if you want to call it that, and actually is it's really funny. Like, now that I've done it for over a year, the audience on Insight Timer that I see on a regular basis does like request things, and that in that respect I kind of feel famous, right?
Yeah.
I get on and I'm like, oh, these are songs that I've created that now people are requesting, and
that's kind of cool.
That are their go-to meditation songs. It is really cool. And so one of the very first one I ever debuted, and one that I would say is like the quick fix if you're in a pinch is even in the chaos, I can find the calm. And the beauty of this is even in the chaos. So we're acknowledging. I think a lot of times we make the mistake of saying, hey, if we just happy, happy, joy, joy, pretend everything's fine, it's going to go, it's like all this anxiety is going to go away. And that you just end up paving over a terrible black hole of anxiety. So even in the chaos, I can find the calm. And I can do a little singing and tapping right now if you want.
Sure. That sounds great.
Okay. So what I do is I sing each of the phrases twice, and I invite the participants to sing along. So I'm not going to put you on the spot. If you want to sing, great. If you don't, just the audience can, sing along. And then we're tapping on different meridian points of our bodies. I can go through them real quick.
Sure.
So the first tapping point is between your eyebrows.
Okay.
The second is to the side of your eye. Then we'll go under the eye, under the nose, right in that, under your bottom lip, right in that chin area. And there's a point that's right under your collarbone. And then sort of middle of your rib cage. And we end by tapping on the top of your head.
Okay.
And this is like, we're using the same principles of acupuncture, if anybody's ever done acupuncture, but we're just using acupressure to release that tension and that fight or flight response. So we all know that anxiety of trying to get tickets and
right.
Like you're sweating and you're just like,
right.
Everything's all tense. So here we go. All right.
Okay.
Even in the chaos, even in the chaos, I can find the calm. I can find the calm. Even in the chaos, even in the chaos, I can find the calm. I can find the calm.
I love that. Thank you. I will make sure that video, I usually do mostly audio, but I will make sure I do this at least on video for that part. I love that. I love that idea. One of my favorite, in fact, when people push me, what is your favorite Bruce Springsteen song? There's a song he wrote called Better Days. And it says, well, my soul checked out missing as I sat listening to the hours and minutes ticking away, yet just sitting around waiting for my life to begin while it was all just slipping away. I'm tired of waiting for tomorrow to come or that train to come rolling around the bend. I've got a new set of clothes, a pretty red rose, and a woman I can call my friend. These are better days. And to me, that song is exactly what you're saying. In the midst of this chaos, I can find the calm. I think too many people, and I've gone, this is my, if people say, well, if you had to do like a TED talk, what would you do? And I go, my TED talk is better days. In the journey, we usually focus on when things are better, then I'll be happy. When the kid's out of diaper, then I'll enjoy being a parent. When I get that promotion, then I'm going to relax and enjoy time, versus the journey is what matters. And if you can realize that today, even if everything is horrible, is a better day, because you are going through that journey. And so I love that idea of that, and even in this chaos, I can find it. And that's beautiful.
Well, so speaking of Bruce Springsteen, knowing that I was coming on this podcast, I did like a little dive of my own.
Good.
And as music director at our church, we would do his version of This Little Light of Mine that he closed out. It's the Live in Dublin record, or
yes, exactly.
And there's nothing like a live experience, and I love that like his version of that, because he really he does a great job of acknowledging every single like group of musicians that are with him, features them, lets them just go crazy and be their best musical selves, and it's just the best. Really
so the reason I'm smiling is I signed up to go to the House of Blues gospel brunch.
Oh yeah.
And it was fun, but I did not get even one song close to the energy of Bruce's This Little Light of Mine, right? I just was, because I agree with you, that video and that song, Bring It Home, Charles, and they start playing that piano.
Oh yes.
And
I'm a piano player, and I have studied that lick so much. Like because it's the best.
I mean, it is on my playlist when I need a sense of joy to hear that song, right?
Yeah.
This little light of mine. And it is a beautiful expression of joy. So I imagine it was wonderful in church. I imagine that was a wonderful thing. That is great. Yeah. All right, April, I have kept you almost an hour. Thank you so much for your time. Any final thoughts before I get to the Mary question?
No.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to give you a chance to promote where to find you, do things, but I end every episode with the Mary question. So for those of you who are fans of April's fine work, and you guys are following her YouTube channel and the other app she does, Bruce wrote a song called Thunder Road, and Jay Armstrong, who is an honors English teacher, recently retired, spent 2 days of his seniors honors English class breaking apart the song as a poem. They would talk about the lyrics, they would talk about the themes, and at the end of the 2 days, he would just ask his class, does Mary get in the car? So April, that is your homework. I understand you've actually sourced your answer and did research. So tell me a little bit about what you did and then give me your answer.
Okay. Yes, I did. I phoned a friend immediately after our interview because I'm fortunate enough to have many friends who are way more knowledgeable than I am about this. So shout out to my friend Rob and Bill, because my first call was to Rob. I posed the question to him. He knew all the lyrics of the song right off the bat. I was so impressed. He works for Jazz Fest, and so he's done setup for Bruce Springsteen before. And so I don't even think that had anything to do with it. He just is one of those very knowledgeable people. So anyway, he gave me a very well thought out answer, and his conclusion was, yes, Mary gets in the car. Okay. But then he said also that we have a mutual friend, Bill, who even knows more about Bruce Springsteen, and that I should talk to him. And so as it happened, we had a wedding this weekend where we were all together, and it was just the hot topic of conversation. So I have to thank you for giving me a conversation starter with all of these people that I have. I don't normally see them all in a big group setting. So It was quite fun. You were hot topic.
Well, that is good. I always like that.
And Bill was in agreement that, yes, Mary gets in the car.
Okay. So. Did they give the reasons why?
Yes. So the general vibe of the song, and I have done my homework as well. I didn't just depend on them for the answer. Okay. But the vibe of the song is, two lonely people and hey, why not spend the night together, because who knows what tomorrow will bring. And my general impression is that once you start that conversation, even though she may be protesting, it's just sort of it's leading in that direction. So it feels like that's where it's going. But who can turn down that lyric? You're not, what is it? You're not perfect, but you're all right. Something like that.
You're not a beauty, but hey, you're all right.
Right. Yeah. They've been texting me that ever since. The guys, they're like, hey, you're not a beauty, but you're all right. I'm like, who can say no to that?
Yeah, there are a few people that say no, she doesn't get in the car, because that's insulting.
Oh, it is, absolutely. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah. Others say that in the context, she had said, I'm not very beautiful. Why would you want me? And he's going, hey, you may not be a beauty, but hey, you're all right. And then he also says, and I'm no hero. That's understood. So yeah,
Right.
there is, yeah. My wife hates the song because she thinks it's a song about settling.
Ooh.
I think it's a song about two lonely people finding each other. So absolutely.
Yeah.
April, this was a great answer. You need to send your two friends my way so you can join me
Absolutely,
on
I
the
will.
podcast. Okay. If someone wants to reach out to you, give us your 5-minute plug or a few minute plug on your mailing list and what you're trying to do about incorporating music and peace of mind.
Oh, thank you so much. Well, my name is April. My website and all my social media is April Sings a Lot. So I'm very easy to find. And what you will find when you head over to either YouTube or Instagram or website is music meditations created to help our daily life. And I incorporate singing with emotional freedom technique and tapping to really calm our stress in what can be a very stressful time.
It truly is, and I signed up for the mailing list, and I have loved your emails and your stories. You weave in personal stories about you and your family, and so I recommend everyone to sign up for it. Yeah, thank you, April. We appreciate it, listeners. Sign up for the mailing list. Go be kind to each other. Let's get through this, and we'll make it together. We appreciate you. Goodbye. Talk to you soon. April, thank you so much for talking to me. I have had a blast. If someone wants to reach you, what's the best way?
I am at April Sings a Lot in all the places. So I have a YouTube and Instagram, and my website is aprilsingsalot.com. And I have a free video series on letting go that I would love to offer your audience at aprilsingsalot.com/set.
Perfect. Sounds great. April, thank you so much for taking time for me. This was a wonderful continued success. And, I'd love to have you on again. Appreciate everything. Listeners, go check with your doctor, get vaccinated, get boosted, and let's be kind to each other because that's how we're going to get through this. Thank you, April. Thank you, listeners. We'll talk to you soon. Goodbye. Thank you, April. This was great. Thank you. This will probably come out in September, but I'll give you plenty of warning, okay?
All right. And I'll
Thank
do
you.
my homework.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.